Hello everyone and welcome to another GTA discussion video, and today I'm going to be talking about the Ill-Gotten Gains update in a little bit more detail. So I'm guessing that most of you, well probably all of you at this point, will have seen the video for the fastest cars in the Ill-Gotten Gains update and know what the results of that are. If you haven't, I would suggest going and watching that now. But this video is where I can sort of talk a little bit more about it, sort of really get into it and explain my thoughts, my personal opinions on it. Not just the cars themselves, but you know, the update itself, what it means for the racing in GTA, all that kind of stuff. I can really give you guys the full picture of what the update means. It will be one of those classic discussion rambling videos that I do. It's no doubt going to be quite long, but yeah, it should at least provide some interest for those who are actually interested in getting a more clear picture of it. So before I actually get into the update itself, I want to just mention that the spreadsheet for the fastest vehicles has been updated. For those of you who don't know, there is a spreadsheet that I have that contains all of the lap times that I've set for all of the fully upgraded cars that I've tested in the videos. Now, I did make a video on this in the playlist, so you can find out a lot more about it. I'll link that down below as well, but I'll also link the spreadsheet down below for just to, you know, if you want to check it out if you haven't already. It basically contains the lap time and a lot of details for every single car that I've tested, how much they cost, whether they're rear wheel drive or all wheel drive, how many seats they have, all that kind of stuff is all in that spreadsheet, including the lap times. I always leave it a few days before I update that spreadsheet when I get the video out, because I like the videos to be sort of the first way that you guys see the results for any new cars, because sometimes it's not all about the lap time. Something may need explaining that I can do more so in a video than just putting up a lap time on a spreadsheet. But I always do update that spreadsheet every single time any new cars come out, but I also update it when cars change a little bit as well. So what I tend to do, I don't just test cars when I need to make a video for them. I'm generally testing them quite often when something's happening. So for example, when we went to new gen, the injection had a little bit of a change in one of its aspects. I can't remember what it was now, but there was a slight change in something to do with the injection. Now at the time I decided to test it again, fully buy another one, fully upgrade it, take it around the track, and it got exactly the same lap time that it did before. So there was no need to do anything different, there was no need to make a video about it because it gets the same lap time. There was no need to change the lap time on the spreadsheet. It's had a bit of a change, but it hasn't affected its overall lap time, so that's fine. Now, more recently, I've found out that the Glendale, the trunk option on the Glendale acts like a spoiler. It adds more traction, just like all of the other spoiler options for most cars. I can't believe it's taken this long for someone to point that out. I don't think many people probably know about it. It's very similar to the spare wheel on the Dubster, where it adds traction, but yeah, it's not a spoiler, it's something else entirely. So I went back and remodded the Glendale, bought another one, tested it out. The lap time that it got with the trunk on, an extra trunk to add that traction, was about a second per lap, nearly a second per lap quicker than what it had achieved when I tested it in the first instance. But importantly, it didn't actually change its position in the sedan's class. So there's no point in me adding it to another video, it's in exactly the same position that it was, albeit it is a little bit closer to the cars that were ahead of it now, but it's in exactly the same position. I think it's 16th place or 17th place, something like that, behind the Super Diamond. So there's no point in me adding it into another video because it doesn't really make a difference. But I have changed the lap time on the spreadsheet, so the spreadsheet does have the updated lap time on, and the same thing has happened with the Insurgent for this update. The Insurgent was always all-wheel drive. A lot of people thought it was rear-wheel drive. It has always been all-wheel drive, but the front wheels only got 4% of the power, the back wheels got 96%, so it might as well have been rear-wheel drive. Now, they've changed that in this update. They've kind of, if you like, admitted that it was a mistake, and the front wheels now have 40% of the power from the engine, not 4. So obviously that was where the typo was. So I went back, tested the Insurgent again. It got a lap time that was about 0.8 of a second quicker than what it managed in the first instance, but again, it didn't change its position in the off-roads class. So I've updated the lap time on the spreadsheet but I'm not going to be including it in another video or updating it that way because there's just no need. It gets the same position that it had before. So the spreadsheet is always where the most up-to-date lap times are going to be. You know, if any changes are made to any of the cars, I'll always update that spreadsheet to make sure it's as accurate as possible. That's the main place. So, you know, for example, if you go back and watch the sedans video, the Glendale's lap time will be nearly a second slower than what it says on that spreadsheet, because the spreadsheet is the most up-to-date version. However, if any cars were to change their positions in their classes, that's when I would make a video on it and sort of explain that and explain what's happened. But I thought it was worth mentioning at the start of this video to let you guys know that, you know, it does continue to be updated, and the links will all be in the description if you want to check that out. So let's talk about the cars in the Ill-Gotten Gains update, and we might as well start with the Osiris. What a car, you know, what a machine. Honestly, I was a little bit underwhelmed by it when I first drove it. You know, driving it to Los Santos Customs, modding it up, and then driving it around a little bit. Even the first couple of laps of testing that I did, I was pretty underwhelmed, you know, especially in comparison to something like the Zentorno or the Turismo, really, where you feel that raw power in it. You know, it feels powerful, it feels quick, the sound of the engine and all that kind of stuff. I didn't get that from the Osiris at all. I just thought, oh wow, it's going to be on the pace of the Entity or even worse, to be honest. And then I saw the lap time, you know, and I saw the lap times that it was getting really, really consistently as well. And I started to realize what this car was all about. You know, for some reason it feels like a bit of a hybrid as well. You know, from I think it's third gear, from second to third gear, could be third or fourth. You can hear the sort of the whine of an electric engine, similar to what you might get from sort of the P1, you know, the McLaren P1, where it uses the electrical engine to power the regular engine as well and just give you that extra boost. It feels like it's got that in it. Now, you know, in terms of the coding of the game, it's probably exactly the same as every other car. You know, there's very little to distinguish in terms of actual coding of the game, cars like this, but that's what's so deceptive about it. You know, it's quite a quiet car in terms of engine sounds and things like that, so it doesn't give you that raw feeling of powerfulness. You know, it doesn't feel like it should be quick, and then you take it around a circuit and you realize that, you know, it's one of those cars that you've got to be really, really smooth with. You've just got to be smooth on every corner, focus on the corner exits. You don't want to slide pretty much at all. You'll lose so much time, whereas the Zentorno is pretty much the opposite. And for me, personally, it suits the way I like to drive perfectly. I've never really been able to get on with the Zentorno, the Turismo, or the Entity, really. The Entity I used to use just because it was kind of my favourite out of the bunch in terms of the way that it drove. But I never really felt happy with any of them. The Osiris is completely different for me. I really, really enjoy driving it. It's certainly a lot better for my driving style than all of the other top supercars. So yeah, it's very, very quick as well. You know, I think there's a lot more time to come out of it. Well, maybe not a lot more, a little bit more time to come out of it. But it is worth noting that the Zentorno does seem to gain more from curb boosts, which I generally try to stay away from in my testing. So if you do like to go on the curbs a lot and get the boosts from any little bump, the Zentorno may end up being quicker. We've yet to see what happens with sort of world record times. It could be very track dependent, but it's good that we've got two cars at the very top of the supercars class that are so close, and I think it's probably the closest class that we have now, from what I can think anyway. In terms of the top cars, maybe the Dominator and the Dukes could be quite close, but it's good that the supercars class has two cars at the very top that have completely different driving styles, and you can choose one that suits you more, and they're both on identical pace. So yeah, that's probably the best thing that we've had about this update, is the fact that the Zentorno isn't the king anymore. You know, it's still up there. It's still certainly on the pace, but it's not alone. And that's all we can really ever ask for when it comes to racing cars. You know, we just want a bit of variety, and to be able to make that choice and still be on the pace with a different driving style, that's all we can really ask for, and the Osiris has given us that. So next up is the Sterling GT. Now, this car is incredible. I absolutely adore this car. Having said that, it's not all perfect because of the way that it's really been implemented into the game, but based on the car itself, unbelievable. It kind of reminds me of the Stinger GT. You know, I love the Stinger GT. I love the styling of it. I love the way that it drives. It's just never been on the pace, never been able to compete in a sports classic race, and I've always thought that was a bit of a shame. The Sterling GT is basically, to me, a Stinger GT that is a lot quicker and able to compete. And it's not only just able to compete, it just decimates everything. It's lovely to drive. It's such a fun car. I love the styling of the Sterling GT as well. The gull-wing doors as well. You know, it's based on an iconic Mercedes 300 SLR as well. It's just a fantastic car, and I was really hoping when I saw the pictures of the car that it would be on the pace in the sports classics class, which it obviously is. So yeah, it's a great car, and from taking it to Los Santos Customs, modding it up, you know, driving it around a little bit in free roam, doing it, the testing with it, throughout the entire time of using that car, I had a big smile on my face, and that just speaks volumes. Considering I was, you know, underwhelmed by the Osiris, I was really enjoying using the Sterling GT. Beautiful car. Really enjoy it. Just to point out, a few people have asked, didn't mention it in the original video, but I probably should have done. The spare tyre on the back of the Sterling GT does add traction. It's in the spoilers class. There is a bug where the first spoiler that you choose in any list on when you're putting a spoiler on a car doesn't add anything to the traction bar. As soon as you actually do apply it to the car, you'll see that the traction bar does increase. So the spare wheel on the back does increase the traction of the Sterling GT, and you need to be having that on if you want the maximum performance out of it. Now, the only problem that I have with it is that it's so damn quick. It's ridiculous how quick this is. I think the Sports Classics class is probably now the most dominated class by one car. The Huntley S is another example in the SUVs class, but yeah, it's ridiculous how quick this is. Now, something that I do need to point out is that the Z-Type, as we know from previous videos, is the quickest car in the game in a straight line. It beats even the Adder. So on long highway races, the Z-Type is still going to be able to compete with the Sterling GT, and really it was that made the Z-Type so dominant in the Sports Classics class. You had to be on a fairly tight and technical circuit for the other Sports Classics to really, you know, compete with it, such as the Casco, the Coquette Classic and the Pigalle. But when you were on a sort of regular track, they were all reasonably close, you know. The Z-Type wasn't all that dominant. It was only when you got on a track, for example, like the one that you're seeing on the screen now, where there's a lot of long straights, that the Z-Type really sort of pulled away from everything else. And compared to the Sterling GT, on a track like this, on Blaine County 24 Hours, I would say that the Z-Type is still going to be able to compete with the Sterling GT, and any long highway races, the Z-Type is going to be the better option because of that incredible top speed that it has. But when it comes to normal races on the majority of tracks, the Sterling GT is going to absolutely demolish everything. It's unbelievable. It seems like Rockstar tried to find something that beat the Z-Type. All of the, you know, with the Casco, the Pigalle, the Coquette Classic, it's as if they tried to find a car that could beat it, weren't able to do it every single time, and then just went completely too far to try and get that goal done. Don't get me wrong, I'm quite happy, to be honest, that the Z-Type is no longer the quickest, because I never really liked it. I never really liked its driving style. I didn't really enjoy using it and the looks of it as well. I'm really happy that I can use the Sterling GT instead of the Z-Type now, and I think Sports Classic races will be a lot of fun, even if everybody is in that car. But yeah, it just seems a little bit too much that the Sports Classics class is now completely dominated by the Sterling GT. It seems a bit too far. But you know, that it is what it is. There's nothing we can do about it now. Sterling GT you've got to have. And I imagine that races will be a lot of fun using that car, so you can't complain too much about it really. Next up, the Windsor. Let's do the Windsor next. My god. The Windsor, the first coupe DLC that we get. The first coupe that we managed to get in a DLC pack, and it's the Windsor. I couldn't believe it when I took it out and I realised just how slow it was. It was only really the last lap that I used with it, well, the last couple of laps, that it elevated itself off the bottom of the coupe's class. It frustrates me. You know, it's the same story as what we had before with the Blister Compact. But it's not actually. The Blister Compact was a good car. It was more that there was frustration about the fact that it hadn't been put into the compact class, which would have been perfect for it. The Windsor, I can totally agree with it being in the coupes class, and it is like the Super Diamond of the coupes class. You know, that's the same maker as the Super Diamond, obviously Ennis. It's got a lot of straight line speed, and I think in really long races, long highway races, the Windsor is probably going to be the best choice because it does have incredible straight line speed, but it's just god awful everywhere else. And I think it's probably worse in the corners comparative to the other coupes in the class than the Super Diamond is in comparison to the other sedans. So, you know, I just wish that we could have had, yes, it's fine putting in a vehicle like that where it has its sort of, you know, high top speed. That's what it's kind of meant for. It's fine putting that in, and it's, you know, for it to not be on the pace of, say, the Zion at the top, I don't mind that, you know. Not every car that we see in a DLC has to be the best, but I would have liked to have seen it be a little bit closer, you know, maybe halfway up the coupes, not nearly an identical lap time to the old version of the Oracle, which is the worst coupe in the game. You know, 1/10 of a second off being the worst coupe in the game is crazy. Obviously that only applies to tracks with corners, but that's pretty much most tracks. Now, the standing of it, I don't like the standing of it either. I don't like the liveries that you can get on it. There's not a lot about the car that I like, but each to their own. You know, there are some people who are going to like it. It's one of those cars that you either love it or hate it, I suppose. So yeah, that's my thought on the Windsor. Bit of a shame that our first coupe DLC was such a letdown from a racing perspective, but there you go, never mind. Finally, the Virgo. Virgo was pretty good, you know. I wish it was in the Sports Classics class. It feels closer to the Peyote and the Manana and the Tornado. It feels closer to those. But yeah, you know, there's quite a few decent modifications on it. I personally won't be buying one, but it was okay, you know. Like I said, it's more for looks than it is for speed. So we were never really expecting that to do anything major in whatever class it was in. So that's fine. It was okay, not too bad. It kind of filled a gap. It filled a bit of a gap, let's say, in the muscle cars class, because there was an 8-second gap between the 10th placed muscle car of the Vigero and the 11th placed muscle car at the time, which was the Hot Knife. I think the Vigero got a 1 minute 13, the Hot Knife with a 1 minute 21. That was a huge gap between two very distinct groups of cars in the muscle cars class. The 118 from the Virgo does bridge that a little bit, but it's kind of in no man's land, you know, on its own. So yeah, there you go. So that's pretty much it, you know. Those are my thoughts on the cars themselves, but we have had other things come into this DLC. It hasn't been just all about the cars. Some things are quite good, you know. We've had some improvements to the racing and some problems that we've had and that we told to Rockstar, you know, that these are some issues that we have. One of them is the Turismo glitch. So, you know, on low profile cars, the suspension height would glitch out when people would respawn in a race, causing, for example, cars like the Turismo, once you've respawned during a race, it would then hit off all the curbs and, you know, make you go flying and stuff like that. That has now been fixed, which is good to see. And parked cars are now fixed. You know, when you could respawn in an area during the middle of a race when traffic was turned off, parked cars were would just randomly spawn, which was a total nightmare. So that has now been fixed as well, which is great to see. So we are getting some improvements to the racing on GTA, but there is still a lot of work to go. There's still a lot of stuff that we've still got to have. For example, the pedestrians spawning, in races, that still hasn't been fixed. Yes, they've fixed the traffic, but pedestrians still spawn even when you've got traffic turned off. And the invite system is still completely broken in the game, which is a shame. I have about 300 people on my friends list now since I opened up my friends list on PS4, and you just can't invite people. You just get invite disabled and all of that bollocks. So yeah, that hasn't been fixed yet. It's a shame, but hopefully they're working on stuff like that. We also didn't see any new cars in the update, which was in terms of yeah, we saw new cars. I just realised how stupid that statement was. We saw new cars, but we didn't see any additions on the website to cars that we've already seen in the game. For example, something like the Lost Slam Van. I was expecting that we'd be able to buy that in this update. That's what I honestly thought, they'd add that in. Normally with an update, they'll add a few cars that are available in the game, but you can't buy, that you can only find on the street. They add some of those cars to the websites, didn't do any of that. So yeah, it's a shame that they haven't added more. 4 cars is pretty small, and they've closed a few areas, like the police station is locked again, which is a shame, because if you remember back to the pre-lobby shenanigans video where the guys before one of the multi-class endurance races used that as a location, and it turned out really good. It was really good for role playing and stuff like that. I don't understand why they feel the need to close these things off, and why can't they just leave it open and let us use these places that they've designed. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame on some counts that they've made those decisions, and we haven't seen even more stuff. I would say that 4 cars is pretty underwhelming for a DLC, but it is only part 1. There is a part 2. I'm going to talk about that at the end of the video, but yeah, this is sort of half of the DLC. So I guess for half a DLC, it's not too bad. And we've had 2 pretty amazing cars with the Osiris and the Sterling GT that make up for everything, really. So what else do I want to talk about? Yeah, I was pretty disappointed as an overall DLC because, as I've mentioned, a few things weren't fixed, and yeah, there were a small amount of cars, but hopefully we'll see some more things come into part 2, and hopefully that isn't too far away either. It seems like the main reason to have this DLC, and the main reason that they brought this in, was to basically bring down the bank balances in GTA Online after heists. They release heists and everybody does the heists, gets a load of money, does the criminal mastermind challenge like myself, gets a load of money. They'll obviously know how much is in total in the game. They know how much people have in their banks in terms of the money that they have. They know the total amount of money in the entire GTA Online universe. They've got stats for that, and it was clear that they want to bring that back down a little bit. That's the only explanation for a DLC like this, where pretty much everything is overpriced. That Luxor is $10 million. That is what, 60? I think that I worked that out to be £80. Something like well over $100 in real money if you were buying shark cards. That's how much that Luxor costs. So that's the reason that they've brought out this DLC, and they're probably going to do the same thing with part 2, make everything overpriced, because everybody has a lot of money now after heists, or most people do anyway, and they want to bring that overall bank balance in the game down so that they can sort of bring out regular stuff at normal prices and have it accessible to most people, and not make it a waste of their time, and still be able to basically sell shark cards, and that's what it's all about. So yeah, that's for me, that seems to be the reason why everything is overpriced, and everything really is overpriced. A lot of the clothes that we have in this DLC are absolutely ridiculous. The liveries for the Windsor, if you don't want the livery that you initially had when you bought the car, that's the best part of $100,000 to change. That's crazy amounts of money just to change a livery every single time that you want to change it. So yeah, that's to me what this DLC has all been about, really. And I think part 2 is probably going to be more of the same. A lot of really expensive stuff, but the things that I'm hoping for part 2 are mainly to do with apartments and houses and things like that. You know, they can add some houses if they want, make it really expensive to buy, and that's fine by me. I'll quite happily buy it. I would say that one of the things that really screams out to me that this may be the case, that they bring in more apartments and new houses or something like that, is that we didn't get a new garage. You know, for the last few updates we've had the ability to buy a new garage. First we could buy one, then we could buy 2 apartments or garages, then we could buy 3. That's what we're at the moment. With all of these new cars available, and you know, the idea that they want to bring down the bank balance overall in GTA Online, you would imagine that they would allow us to buy some more garages, because we spend money getting the garage itself, and then we spend money buying the cars to fill the garage itself. So you would imagine that it would be within their interests, if they do want to bring the bank balance down overall, to let us buy some more garages. Whether there's any technical difficulties with doing that, I don't know. I can't imagine that there would be. But yeah, I was surprised that we didn't get the ability to buy a 4th garage. So that's what leads me to believe that in part 2 they may focus on more apartments, or you know, personally I would like to see mansions. You know, the ability to buy houses, proper mansions in a lot of different areas in the Vinewood Hills or further out in different places. I would love to be able to do that, and it doesn't matter if they have all the same interior, you know, I don't mind, but give us the ability to buy lots of different types of houses. You know, they can have 20 car garages, or they can stick with 10 car garages, I don't mind, but it would be nice to have for them to have 20 car garages. Maybe you can only buy one mansion, but it has a 20 car garage, but there's maybe 20 different locations or 30 different locations that you can actually buy. So you could enter a lobby with 30 people and nobody has the same house, and you could have sort of 10 different people all on the same street, all in a house that nobody shares, you know, all in different houses. So that's something that I would personally like to see. It's something that I've wanted to see for a while, the ability to own houses or mansions, you know, more so than just apartments that we have now, which are pretty boring, and it's been quite a while since we've seen any kind of update to that. We got 5 brand new apartments quite a while ago now, and they all had the same interior. You know, there was only 5 of them, and there were some of them, they were all in the same locations that we'd had before, where we'd had the older apartments. So that's what I think is going to be part of the part 2 of this DLC. I would imagine, you know, it seems to make sense that they want us to spend the money that we've got from heists, so they're going to add more stuff that's quite expensive. Hopefully that's going to take the shape of new houses, new mansions, or even just new apartments, more garage space that we can own, anything like that that makes us spend that money. That's what I think is going to be constituting part 2. We've had 4 new cars, but this was mainly focusing part 1 on clothes, I guess, really. I think we might see the same sort of thing in part 2, maybe 3 or 4 new cars again, but then it will focus on houses and apartments. So let me know down below what you think is going to constitute part 2. What did you think about this DLC in general? Did you think it was quite good or a bit underwhelming? Let me know all your thoughts down below. I really appreciate all the support that you showed on that Ill-Gotten Gains DLC video. It's crazy. It broke all my records for views in the first sort of day and hour views and stuff like that. It really did perform well. So thank you so much for that. I really do appreciate it. And again, remember to check the spreadsheet link down below if you were interested in that. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone. I really do appreciate it. And I'll see you next time.